The January 6th insurrection culminated from a nearly year-long disinformation campaign warning of a rigged election and a 20-year assault on voting rights, centered around racist and often baseless allegations of voter fraud. The 2020 contest has been audited, evaluated, and investigated, and Republicans, Democrats, and the majority of the U.S. Supreme Court have acknowledged no evidence of widespread fraud. A lie cloaked in the seductive appeal of election integrity has weakened access to democracy for millions by promoting voter suppression. Voter suppression is at its core actions taken by the state to discourage or prevent eligible voters from casting their ballots. However, the truth is this: Congress must reject voter suppression and act boldly and quickly to safeguard, strengthen, and preserve our democracy. As our nation becomes more diverse, the anti-democratic forces have focused their energy on peddling unwarranted and expensive voter restriction measures. According to the Brennan Center, as of February 24th, more than 253 bills have been put forward in 42 state legislatures seeking to restrict voting access. The legislation often comes with a disclaimer that these restrictions are necessary to restore confidence in voting. Yet the secretaries of state in these jurisdictions repeatedly rejected outcries of voter fraud or issues of election integrity just last year. As a Republican committee chairman in my home state of Georgia admitted during a recent hearing regarding anti-voting rights legislation, there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud, and this excuse is, quote, just in people's minds. For more than a decade, Georgians have utilized an array of voting options with varying degrees of access that have been harmed by voter suppression. Most of these advances, though, were made under Republican leadership, and these practices enjoyed bipartisan support and routinely resulted in the election of Republican and Democratic candidates. Sadly, though, Georgia Republicans have responded to record turnout by Black, Latino, and Asian voters in 2020 by filing more than 50 bills to make it harder to register to vote, to cast a ballot, and to have that ballot counted. Bills filed include repealing Republican-instituted automatic voter registration, severely restricting in-person early voting opportunities, and repealing no-excuse vote by mail. Georgia stands as a singular example of the legislative whiplash from defending the integrity of elections in November and January to these naked attempts to erect new hurdles for voters of color, young voters, poor voters, and other marginalized communities. Unfortunately, Georgia is not alone. In Arizona, growth in Latino and Native American voters has fostered legislation to severely restrict vote by mail, including criminalizing drop box ballot returns by immediate family members. Pennsylvania Republicans responded to record turnout by filing bills to repeal no-excuse absentee voting and eliminate in-person absentee voting. Dozens of other states are following these trends. H.R. 1 would not negate every harm posed by these legislative assaults, due to the delegation of power to the states with regards to election administration. However, the provisions of H.R. 1 would create a uniform foundation for democracy in America that does not rely on geography. Expansion and protection of voting rights has long had a storied bipartisan history in America, despite attempts by leaders in both parties to thwart equality. Indeed, this body has come together after controversial elections to demand reforms that serve neither party, but instead speak to the will and the needs of the electorate. The For the People Act is a contemporary example of the courage of the many to oppose the fears of the few. H.R. 1 has broad-based and bipartisan support for its provisions to empower voters and protect our free and fair and safe elections. H.R. 1 would remove barriers to voting, set standardized guidelines, and provide states with the funding and equipment they need to administer and protect our elections. Congress alone holds the power to implement federal protections, power it has used before. As a former state legislator, I believe this body can and must respect the differences in states and allow them to decide how best to administer elections to meet the specific needs of their people. However, a citizen's fundamental ability to access our democracy, to register, vote, and be counted should not rely on their state of residence. This set of pro-democracy reforms will place power back in the hands of everyday Americans, of every political stripe, wherever they live. I thank you for this opportunity and look forward to this conversation.